Hello and welcome. I'm going to be talking about the astrology of April 2024 in this video. I'm going to be spending a lot of time talking about Aries and the fire element, specifically as well as Mercury retrograde. The 1st of April, we launch right into Mercury retrograde in Aries. And since Aries is also the sign that the North Node has been traveling through since July of last year until January of 2025, this is where a lot of our soul growth is happening. The North Node always points to where we are being challenged and invited to grow and to expand our awareness, our skills. So this Mercury retrograde in Aries is going to be significant because we're going to be putting some of these skills to the test. So without further ado, I'm going to just do a quick overview of the transits of the month, and then I'll go down the line, break them down one by one, spending most of the time on Mercury retrograde. And let's begin. Let me share my screen here. All right. So the astrology of April 2024, starting with Mercury retrograde at 27 degrees Aries. Mercury retrograde will be traveling all the way through April 25th, stopping at 15 degrees Aries. So if you have any planets between 27 and 15 degrees Aries, Libra, Cancer, or Capricorn, you're going to be hitting, those planets will be hit by this Mercury retrograde by conjunction, opposition, or square. I won't get into the details of that, but especially planets in Aries, even if they don't fall within these degrees, they're still going to be activated. This house, whatever house you have Aries ruling in your chart, has been activated with the North Node traveling through here again since July of 2023 until January 2025. So Mercury retrograde at 27 degrees Aries on April 1st, April 5th, Venus moves into Aries. Then we have on April 8th a new moon solar eclipse in Aries, and we are already in an eclipse cycle, which began on March 25th with the full moon eclipse in Libra. So we've got this Mercury retrograde sandwiched right between an eclipse cycle. Then we have Taurus season beginning on April 19th. April 20th, we have a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus. That's a big deal. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Then we've got a full moon in Scorpio on the 23rd. Mercury stations direct on the 25th. Yay. And then we have Venus entering Taurus on the 29th, and then Mars entering Aries on the 30th. So we do have lots of fire energy going on. That is typical, whenever we have Aries season, the sun is in Aries. Mercury and Venus are never far behind the sun. So they tend to also be in fire signs, Aries, specifically, of course, when the sun is also. So we've got a fiery and then earthy, watery month ahead. So let's talk about, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Let's talk about Aries. We have overall this year, all the Mercury retrogrades are going to be in fire signs. This is a fire Mercury year. This is the first full Mercury retrograde of the year. But then we have a Virgo Mercury retrograde in the fall, but then it slides into Leo. And then in December, we've got retrograde in Sagittarius. Actually, it starts end of November. So we are dealing with the fire element with the Mercury retrogrades this year. And Mercury in particular relates to our thoughts and to our words, how we think and process information and how we communicate. So we are learning how to think and communicate more efficiently in the fire element this year. And this Mercury retrograde, again, is important because it's the sign of the North Node. So with Aries, we are dealing with survival and thriving. Aries is the very first fire sign of the zodiac. It's kind of like the energy of first being born in the world. Think of it as, a baby screaming for milk, for food, right? Baby animals like screaming to their mother for nourishment. It's the survival mode and self-preservation instinct in terms of how do I protect myself in this world? What do I need to feel safe? And with Aries, we're dealing specifically with physical body safety, right? What do I need to feel safe? How do I protect myself? How do I protect those I love and what matters most to me? And then beyond that, So backtracking, we also have conflict, right? So that's another part of the survival. So we have the basic survival self-preservation instincts, but then in a more evolved sense, how do we deal with conflict and stress in our lives? That is Aries energy. Aries is the god of war. And then, of course, we have the South Node in Libra, the goddess of peace, right? Libra is ruled by Venus. Venus is the goddess of love. So we have the god of war, we have the god of love. And how do we navigate these dichotomies, war and peace? So with Aries, we also have thriving. So that's the higher energy, you could say, beyond just basic survival needs. What do I need to feel safe, to protect myself, to go after the resources that I need, to take up space? Then we have thriving. How do I express my most authentic self? Who am I in this world? What am I here to do, right? That sense of purpose that drives Aries, it's self-discovery is the thriving part of Aries. So again, Mercury is about our thoughts and our communications. So it's how we think about conflict, how our thoughts can lead to conflict, or and this is more so along the lines of ego, right? Like let's say we're in a situation, we're driving down the side of the road, somebody cuts us off, an aggressive driver. And then our thoughts start spinning. That asshole, I can't believe it. Oh, people are so horrible these days. And like the cortisol starts to stir up in the body. And then the body starts reacting as if it's been threatened. So this is where thoughts are different from actual physical threats, because that would be more Mars, Aries energy. And so paying attention to how our thoughts are producing physiological responses in the body. When we do feel threatened, when we do feel attacked, when we do feel our boundaries have been violated, how do we communicate that, right? How do we deal with our anger, our irritability, our frustration? This is all what this Mercury in Aries is about and what the North Node is really about, right? During this 18-month time period, we're dealing with our anger. We're dealing with our boundaries. We're learning to be assertive, to be direct. We're also looking at the shadow side of that, which is rage and aggression and selfishness, self-entitlement. That's the dark side of Aries. But then on the lighter side, we're also looking at passion, creativity, what brings us closer to our sense of vitality. So because Aries is fire, we're looking at the fire element within ourselves, within our lives. How do we stoke the fire of vitality, of survival, of thriving? And when we feel that fire activated in us because of some external circumstance or some thoughts that we're having, how do we manage that fire so that we don't get burned and so that we don't burn people that maybe we care about or lead to unnecessary conflict, right? So let's talk a little bit about managing the fireball. I'll be curious to know or to hear if you want to send me an email for those of you watching. How have you felt activated since July of last year, since the North Node's been in Aries? But also we've been in the shadow period of this Mercury retrograde since March 18th. I've already noticed just in the peripheral that there has been a lot of irritability and frustration. Even in myself, I've noticed like, oh gosh, I'm like so much more on edge. So that's kind of the preview of this Mercury retrograde in Aries. What's been coming up for you over the last couple of weeks? Where have been the source of your irritations, your frustrations, your anger? And so when it comes to managing the fireball, we're looking at how it affects us internally and then how we project that externally. So to this, I would ask you, are you someone that tends to push down your anger and frustration because you don't like conflict? Maybe you don't want to hurt people's feelings. Maybe you feel disempowered at times and you just don't know how to set boundaries. So you're a under expressor of anger, or do you fall more on the other side of the spectrum? Like when something bothers you or irritates you, you just get it out. You say it, you speak it. Sometimes maybe you say it in the wrong way. Maybe it's a little bit abrasive at times. People have given you feedback that, wow, that was like a little too direct. Or, are you somewhere in the middle? Or are you on the one side in certain situations with certain people? And do you fall a little bit more on the other side with other situations and other people? So take a little moment, feel free to pause and do some self-reflection. What is my relationship to fire, to anger, to passion, to creativity, but especially anger? We're kind of focusing on boundaries first. So we'll focus on, make a note, the survival instinct first, and then we'll talk more about the thriving in a bit. So what is your relationship to anger, to personal boundaries? Do you underexpress? Do you overexpress? Does it depend? Different situations. Take a moment to maybe journal, write it out, think about that, and then come back. Okay, so when we're in a situation, when we're triggered, right? Somebody steps on our toe, right? The immediate instinct is, ow, like, get off, you're standing on my foot, that hurts, right? That is the basic core Aries instinct, self-preservation. I am here to protect my physical safety, my body, to prevent pain, and also to develop strength and courage and resilience. But the core foundation is safety, right? Getting those basic needs met. So if somebody is triggering you and you feel anger, resentment, frustration, then how do you navigate this situation, right? So first we can look at the nature of our thoughts about it. Did you immediately jump to thoughts about how that person is a horrible person? They're making really bad choices. They did this on purpose, right? If our thoughts are skewing negative, then our body's going to have a physiological response that's going to release cortisol, maybe even adrenaline, depending on the situation. And then that's when the fireball can explode, right? If we don't take time to manage that, or we push it down because we don't feel empowered to speak our needs. Maybe we were raised in a situation where we were told we had to be nice and kind and thoughtful or considerate, especially people that have their South Node in Libra, or have a lot of Libra energy, that were raised, conflict averse. So if that's the case, you just push it down, push it down, push it down. The fire is energy. It's energy. It's not going to go anywhere. You either work through it, you move through it, you move it out of your body, or you explode it, right? But it's still there. It doesn't go away. So if we suppress our anger and frustration, if we don't communicate it, it leads to bitterness and resentment. And it leads to passive aggressive behavior because eventually that fire has to have an outlet. And then it spews out in this big, like, you always do this, or you never, or then it becomes not about this one particular event that you're trying to address, but all these times in the past, but you never told the other person about what was happening within you and what your boundaries were. So then either way, this fireball is going to come spewing out and it's going to hurt other people. So when we start to feel the little irritation, the frustration, the resentment, that is our body's cue that our boundaries have been violated, that there's an unmet need, that we need to assert ourselves, right? So managing the fire, acknowledging that it's there for a reason, it's there to protect us. Now, what do we do with that? How do we communicate that? Of course, in Aries, we're dealing with being direct, being assertive. This doesn't mean being aggressive. This doesn't mean that we're being mean. Again, we're managing the fire. And that is why Aries' opposite is Libra, the goddess of love. Libra is the diplomat. And we have the South Node in Libra along with the North Node in Aries. So we are learning how to communicate tactfully when our boundaries are being violated, but to do so in a direct way, right? If Libra had her way, she would not communicate around conflict because Libra is the peacekeeper. But actually, the highest expression of Libra is the diplomat, and they do know how to resolve conflict. But how do we tactfully tell someone that they've stepped on our toe or that what they did was painful for us, right? So I'm not an expert, I'm not a therapist, so I can't give you all kinds of perfect advice here for how to have conversations like this, but I do highly recommend the book Set Boundaries by Nedra Tawwab, and I will link that, making a note for myself, in the description below if you want to check out that book, How to Set Boundaries, Communicate Boundaries. But whenever we are feeling attacked or harmed or our boundaries been violated, whenever we want to have that conversation with someone, we want to make it about us, not about them. So here's a metaphor that I like to use a lot for myself personally, because sometimes when I'm hurting, when something is bothering me, when I'm feeling violated or invalidated, I will often sometimes project that onto other people, right? This is my own self-awareness. But I'm having to learn, like, oh no, this is just a pain or a struggle that I'm dealing with, and I need to address this. And it may include, talking to another person. So with this metaphor, I like to look at address the thorn, don't attack the rose. So what I mean by this, maybe we're going about life, we're exploring a rose garden, we're picking a rose, they smell amazing, but then we get a thorn in our hand, right? This is just the nature of life. We navigate life. There's going to be times of conflict, times of pain, suffering. So lashing out at the rose means blaming the other for the pain inflicted rather than addressing the pain specifically and how it's hurting you. The rose, ultimately, other people, they're really just minding their own business. They're living their own life. They're navigating things from their own worldview. Most people aren't intentionally trying to harm other people. They're just being a rose, And I like this metaphor because roses are beautiful. And I really do believe every single human being is a beautiful soul. So rather than lashing out the rose for the thorn that's in your hand, that's not going to get you anywhere. That's not going to get rid of the thorn. That's just you attacking other people. Instead, oh, this is the thorn, like this is the pain, this is what I need to address. I need to pull this thorn out, I need to clean it, I need to attend to it. And maybe it means having a conversation with that rose, about, hey, like when you said or did this, it made me feel this way, or this is how I responded to that, or I interpreted it in this way. Was that your intention? Did I misunderstand something? So you're focusing on you, your experience, your pain, how you feel. And you're bringing that to the attention of someone else for the purpose of mutual understanding, conflict resolution. So we're looking at the nature of our thoughts around conflict. Do they tend towards negativity and blame and judgment? And if they do, that's okay. We're only human. But it's, am I going to buy into this storyline? And that's going to just elevate the anger, and then the fireball is just getting out of hand? Or am I going to look at the nature of my thoughts, question whether or not my perspective on the situation is accurate, and instead just focus on my hurt, what I perceived, what I experienced, and maybe bring that to the attention of somebody else, right? So we're managing the fireball, especially as it relates to our thoughts about things, and then how we communicate them. Next, we have the communication aspect. Whatever the situation may be, it could be with a boss, it could be with a family member, whatever comes up for you during this Mercury retrograde, you have to decide, do I address this with this person? Do I set boundaries with this person? Beyond just figuring out what is the right way to say it, you have to also, so maybe I should put this as the first condition, need to decide if this is someone safe to share. Some people just are not capable of empathy. Some people, no matter what you say, how you say it, how tactfully, how kindly and lovingly, they will just take everything as an attack, right? And if you have a history with this person of making attempts, even kind and respectful attempts at communicating your needs, and they went ignored or attacked, then you have to ask yourself, is this person a safe person to even have this conversation with? Is this conversation going to be beneficial in any way? Are we going to get anywhere? Will we be able to arrive at some kind of peaceful conclusion or mutual understanding? Or is this person just not going to be able to hold space for me in the way that I know that I need? Then you may need to consider maybe addressing it directly with the person isn't the best solution. Maybe adjusting your own mindset is the better solution. Again, you can still set boundaries and people might rage against your boundaries. That's okay. If you need to set a boundary for your own safety, you have to do that. That is Aries. You are responsible for your safety. Okay. So again, your thoughts around that and how you communicate that tactfully. Now, again, if you're on the other side of the spectrum and you do tend to address things more openly, you're direct, you're assertive, when things bother you, you say it, you get it out, but maybe sometimes people get burned when you do that, learning how to manage that fireball again, focusing instead on maybe stepping away from the situation first, screaming in a pillow, doing some physical fitness, whatever emotional technique works for you, listening to music, going for a walk, stepping away from the situation in order to get clarity about what it is that really bothered you. What is at the root of that? What was triggering about that situation? And how do you want to communicate and articulate this going forward? That is what Mercury retrograde is all about. We're becoming more introspective as relates to our thoughts and our words. And because it's Mercury retrograde and it is in Aries, Aries can be impulsive. It just might happen that we are going to spew fire a little bit, and then we're going to have to put our foot in our mouth, and we may have to go back to the person and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry that didn't come out the way I wanted it to." This might happen. This is what Mercury retrogrades can bring up. They just bring up miscommunication, misperceptions of the situation. So know that if these do happen, it's okay. You're human. We're not perfect. We all have our flaws and our issues. What matters is your willingness to resolve the conflict, how we navigate conflict, how we develop resilience around conflict and stress. That is Aries. Okay. So this is what we're learning right now in this Mercury retrograde, but also bigger picture with the North Node in Aries. So how do we manage that fireball? How do we emotionally regulate? Again, if you're a suppressor, learning to stoke that fire, but in healthy ways, moving it through you. Again, it's just energy. One of the things that I like to do, I like to remind myself that life is just a roller coaster, and it is a roller coaster of emotions, and there's nothing we can do about that. That is just this business of being human in this world. So finding ways to move through the emotions, even in a playful way. So if life is an emotional roller coaster, what do I do when I'm on a roller coaster? I throw my hands up and I go, right? That's a good emotional technique. I've done this before when a very aggressive person cut me off and then tailgated me on the highway. And that really gets my adrenaline going. I don't know if it's just because for me, it's like, oh, that's so rude and inconsiderate and unkind. And those are triggers for me. It just gets my blood boiling. And man, I was like seeing red this one day that this person was doing this. And so I was like, oh, life's a roller coaster. Whee! And I did it like 4 times. Whee! Until I started giggling hysterically. It was so funny because I just, moving the energy out. And it helped me to release that fire. It helped me to also realize that it's not a big deal. Like nothing is really that big of a deal that it needs to rob me of my joy, right? Or my peace of mind. So you can try that roller coaster. You can try making really funny faces in the mirror, screaming, shaking. Shaking is really good. Shaking is amazing. Moving the fire up and out. You can also do, I don't know if I can show you right now in a specific situation, but goddess pose. In yoga, you identify with the divine feminine, bringing your feet apart. Sorry, guys, this isn't going to be a great demonstration. We're doing improv, okay? Pulsing, moving the hands up, breathing, exhaling. Or you can also call this warrior pose if you're divine masculine, right? Have you identified beating the chest, really just getting the fire burning in the thighs, activating the breath, activating the exhale, moving the fire through the body as a way of coping with mental stress, with physical stress, moving that fireball around, managing it rather than letting it tear through you, burn through you, lose complete control in ways that could be harmful to yourself and others, or lose complete control, but in a constructive environment, right? Fitness, boxing, wrestling, dance, right? If you want to just be completely liberated to express that fire however you want, doing it in a safe situation. So that is the survival, self-preservation aspect of Aries and Mercury retrograde. Now, moving to the thriving. So that higher expression of Aries, that individuation, self-discovery, passion, creativity, eroticism, sexual expression, desire. Maybe this Mercury retrograde is also going to help you connect to that, stoking the inner fire. You know, has your inner fire burned down to just little embers? Do we need to add some air to it to get that flame going? What do you need during these next few weeks, but also during the rest of this North Node Aries transit? What do you need to feel alive, to have vitality? Ask yourself these questions. Journal about it, vision board it, really think about, what do I need to feel more alive, to feel more in touch with myself, to have more clarity around who I am and what's most important to me and how I want to express in the world. So that is the thriving aspect of Aries. And again, you can activate that as well through dance, through play fighting. Again, Aries is the warrior, the soldier. So play fighting, air punching, moving that energy in whatever way resonates with you, getting creative with art. Again, Aries is also very physical, being the soldier, the athlete, competition, engaging in healthy competition, moving the physical body, feeling the burn, feeling the activation. These are all ways to connect with that Aries energy. But again, especially with Mercury, we're looking at thoughts and communication. Okay, so that is Mercury retrograde. Again, concluding on moving my screen back up. Uh-oh, where did my picture go? Okay, thank you for your patience. Concluding on the 25th of April. All right, and then April 5th, we do have Venus moving into Aries. And this can be helpful because, again, that Aries combative energy with Mercury retrograde here, Venus is by nature more loving, the peacekeeper, right? So Venus moving into Aries can help us to figure out how we want to smooth over some of the rough edges, how we want to smooth over a conflict maybe that we've already found ourselves in, something that's already happened. How do we go in and bring love into that situation? Okay, and then April 8th, we have the new moon solar eclipse at 19 degrees Aries. And the eclipses are all about clearing out what is no longer serving us, clearing out what needs to be released, healing what needs to be healed so that we can plant new seeds, right? All new moons are about that, but a new moon eclipse is like an amplified version of that. And with the full moon eclipse in Libra on March 25th, thinking about, some of the conflict that may have come up in your relationships. Libra is all about relationships. These can be romantic relationships, friendships, coworker relationships. What did that full moon bring up for you? And how are you navigating that? How are you clearing out some of the conflict? How are you navigating the dialogue and the peaceful resolution, or setting those strong boundaries with this Mercury retrograde? And then leading up to that new moon solar eclipse, how are we taking what we've learned, integrating into our life and putting our best foot forward in the areas that we want to change, specifically the area ruled by Aries in your birth chart? Which house does Aries rule in your birth chart? That is going to show you where all this activity is happening. Then we have Taurus season beginning on April 19th. So we've got some grounded earth energy. We're focusing more on money and on work and on productivity. Then on the 20th, Jupiter conjuncts Uranus in Taurus. Uranus has been in Taurus since May of 2019. Jupiter since May of last year, and Jupiter is about to leave Taurus in May. We'll be shifting into Gemini. So Uranus is this force of revolution, of change, of chaos, of progress, of innovation. It's the energy of breaking out of the mold, taking up more space, innovating the way we show up. And with Taurus, it's our finances, our relationship to money, our relationship to work and how we work and our work habits and our work ethic, our professional goals, but also our sense of safety as relates to the material. So our home, again, our resources, our money, our savings, all of that is what Taurus or Uranus has been working on with us in Taurus. Jupiter conjuncting Uranus is going to expand all of that. That's what Jupiter does. Jupiter expands, magnifies, and amplifies. So this could be a great time to really look at your finances, what goals you have for yourself, setting some intentions. The house ruled by Taurus in your birth chart, this is where things can get shaken up and where real growth and progress can happen with this conjunction. It's a great day to really write out your goals, financial goals, relationship goals. Again, looking at the house that Taurus rules in your chart, and setting some intentions for what you want this transit to do. Then on the 23rd, that full moon in Scorpio. With Scorpio, we're looking at our psychology, our emotional health, right? Coming off the heels of the Mercury retrograde and the eclipse. How are we doing emotionally, mentally, psychologically? How are we managing the resources that we share with other people? How do we build trust with others? How do we create psychological safety and boundaries? So that full moon can bring up areas where we need to do some healing as well. And then Mercury stations direct. What did you learn from the experience? Then Venus moves into Taurus. Again, we're spending more time with our money, looking at pleasure and quality of life and how we want to spend our money in ways that engage the senses. And then we have Mars shifts into Aries on April 30th. And this could be an interesting one because then Mars will be traversing the territory that the Mercury retrograde and Venus just visited. So we may be revisiting some of these themes. And with Mars, we are addressing conflict head on with our physical energy, not just with our words. I don't want to make that sound like we're going to be getting into fights. But with Mars and Aries, we are looking to be more assertive. We are looking to be more independent. So maybe we're actually making some changes based on ideas or insights that we gained with Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde can definitely give us clarity, clarity of thought, not always at the beginning. Sometimes we go into a Mercury retrograde being kind of confused or unsure of where we want change to happen or how we're going to navigate something. But then by the end of that retrograde, we have gained clarity because we did the introspection. So then Mars entering Aries is, okay, how are we going to implement that? How are we going to actually put that into practice? What decisions or changes need to take place based on the insights and the growth and the learning that happened during that Mercury retrograde? So I hope that this video was helpful. Again, learning how to manage the fire. We are navigating a lot of fire energy this year with the retrogrades, with the North Node in Aries. So how do we deal with that fire energy when it comes up? Again, I'll share below the link to that book, Set Boundaries. It's an excellent book. I think it can help you to really figure out how you want to articulate your needs and boundaries in certain situations. But yeah, best of luck to you. And no matter what happens, everything is an opportunity for growth. At the core of Aries as well is resilience and courage, the willingness to face and overcome challenges and to grow stronger as a result of them. So whatever happens, whatever comes up for you, lean into it. Know that it is making you stronger. You are capable of handling it. You may need to learn or cultivate some new skills, some to help you, some new emotional techniques, but you can get there and you'll be better for it. So have a wonderful, happy April.